Hello, History 362. So today I want to talk about the Seleucid dynasty after the death of Antiochus the Great. Remember, Antiochus the Great has been crushed at the Battle of Magnesia in 190. He's been forced to accept the really humiliating Treaty of Apamea, which not only deprives him of basically all of Asia Minor, north and west of the Taurus Mountains, but also forbids him from having a fleet, forbids him from maintaining war elephants, forbids him from recruiting mercenaries from Asia Minor. Also, perhaps more seriously, requires him to pay an indemnity, 3,000 talents up front and 1,000 talents a year for 12 years. This is an extraordinary amount of money. It probably represents 15 or 20% of Seleucid revenues every year, although Seleucid revenues are shrinking as the territory diminishes. It's perhaps a sign that Antiochus is already having serious fiscal problems when he is killed in 187 trying to sack a temple in Elam. Elam, the Elamite highlands, seem to be places that are always tenuously under Seleucid control. It's quite possible that the motive for sacking the temple is to make up for unpaid taxes, but regardless, the Elamites themselves rise up, fight back, and Antiochus himself dies. The succession there goes to his son, Seleucus IV, and Seleucus IV mostly has a quiet reign. He does his best to pay off the indemnity, although he does miss several payments, again suggesting the Seleucids are having financial problems. We do have a recent inscription, the Olympiodorus Stele, that suggests that the Seleucids are trying to focus on the increasingly efficient extraction of revenues from their provinces. And this one is particularly interesting because it interacts with a scene from the book of Maccabees. Namely that there is a story in the book of Maccabees that Seleucus IV's Epiton Pragmaton, a guy named Heliodorus, tries to go into the temple to inspect the books and then remove, again, probably unpaid taxes from the temple, but the Jews see this as a despoliation. And Heliodorus is frustrated in this attempt because a couple of angels come and send him packing. Now, with the Olympiodorus Stele, we do see that there is an attempt in Coeli Syria broadly, but including in Judea, to increase basically the oversight of sanctuaries. And one thing to remember is that sanctuaries across the Seleucid Empire are really important for the economy. They are actually oftentimes the ones who are collecting the taxes. Indeed, we know that the high priest of the temple of Yahweh in Jerusalem collects the taxes for Judea and then forwards it to the Seleucids. So there's a reason why a Seleucid official is therefore going to be closely inspecting the revenues that these temples are taking in. And the Olympiodorus Stele shows correspondence between Olympiodorus and Heliodorus, basically to ensure that there is improved supervision of temple revenues. This improved supervision may be where we get the kind of fantastic story in the book of Maccabees about Heliodorus trying to enter the temple, getting kicked out of the temple. But it also shows that the increased need of the Seleucids to extract revenues are met with a high degree of tension from their subjects. And of course, a lot of this money is getting sucked out and then sent in large installments to Rome. Seleucus IV, one of the other things that the Seleucids have to do is to send hostages to Rome to ensure their compliance with the treaty. And for a long time, the hostage in Rome, the main hostage in Rome, is Antiochus IV, the brother of Seleucus IV. They're both sons of Antiochus the Great. And Antiochus IV seems to actually enjoy his time in Rome. He discovers that he loves gladiatorial games. He seems to be amused by the way in which Roman politicians have to go around campaigning for office, shaking hands, and patting people on the back and saying, vote for me. But late in Seleucus IV's reign, Antiochus the Great is released, and he's swapped out for Seleucus IV's own son, Demetrius, who is kind of the crown prince, the logical successor, should and when Seleucus IV dies. Now, Seleucus IV dies in 174, killed, it seems, by Heliodorus. Here, remember that potentially toxic situation in the reign of Antiochus the Great, where he's a young king beholden to his own epiton pragmaton Hermias. And one reason that Antiochus the Great had liquidated Hermias was the fear that once his own son was born, Hermias would have him killed and then would rule as regent through this infant. It seems that's what Heliodorus now wants to do, because at this point there is a baby named Antiochus the baby, we'll call him. And it seems that Heliodorus says, I'm just going to get Seleucus IV out of the way, and then I can be the regent for this child. At this point, Demetrius, the adult, capable crown prince, a friend of Polybius, is stuck in Rome as a hostage, so he can't come and claim the kingdom. And the Senate, more than happy to basically use this hostage situation to meddle in the Seleucid succession, will not allow him to leave, even though he says, please, I should be the next king, let me go. Into the situation, Antiochus springs into action. He's been kind of just hanging out for a while in Athens. He's sort of a bit of a Philhellene intellectual, but now he moves back into the Seleucid Empire. Enough forces proclaim him king, and he is therefore able to seize power. The Antiochus the baby, the infant son of Seleucus, seems to be liquidated shortly thereafter. So now Antiochus IV is king. He takes the epithet Epiphanes, although sort of the God manifest, although there are some people who say that he acts oddly and should be called Epimanis, the crazy guy. There are some indications that his sort of Roman ways are seen as a little bit odd, so he, among other things, introduces gladiatorial-style games into the Seleucid Empire, mostly because it seems he likes them. He also runs for civic office in Antioch, and this may not be totally madness. He may be actually trying to kind of forge a connection between himself and the still real polis of Antioch, which has its own civic offices, and we know that it's not uncommon for kings to be honorarily elected into the offices of various cities, both in their realm and even outside of it. But people find it strange that Antiochus, having seen this happen in Rome, people going around and canvassing for office, goes around shaking hands, patting people on the back, and saying, "Please vote for me." To be the treasurer in Antioch. So again, his behavior is seen as a little bit puzzling. Now, the main military activity that Antiochus IV undertakes is the Sixth Syrian War, which he fights with the Ptolemies. He invades, the war seems to break out in 170, he invades Egypt in 169, and his exact war aims are a little hazy. It seems for a moment that he may intend to annex Egypt into the Seleucid Empire, the whole enchilada. And indeed, he is actually crowned king in Memphis, and his invasion is successful. Egyptians can't stop him. He also, though, seems to change his mind and simply decide that he's going to support his own nephews, Ptolemy VI, in a succession crisis between two of the sort of sons of Ptolemy V, Ptolemy VI, and Ptolemy VIII. So again, his mind seems to be of two ways. Should he just put his own candidate on the Ptolemaic throne militarily, or should he put himself on the throne? He clearly decides one thing: he's going to pillage everything he can. And indeed, Polybius tells us that he badly pillages a lot of Egyptian sanctuaries. Now, he leaves Egypt after 169, but as these sort of two rival claimants to the Ptolemaic throne start to fight amongst each other, he reinvades in 168. Before he goes in, he seems to remove a significant amount of treasure from the temple in Jerusalem, probably to help fund his military operations, and again, perhaps on the pretext that these were unpaid taxes. We will see next time that the situation with the Jews in Jerusalem is about to explode. But his removal of this money may be sort of adding some fuel to the fire. That said, his invasion in 168 is unceremoniously stopped. And here we have to actually think about this in context. So 168, remember what's just happened. The Battle of Pydna, in which the Roman armies have crushed Perseus's force. And it seems that the Romans were always unhappy. I mean, the Romans are at this point standing allies of the Ptolemaic dynasty. They've been unhappy with Antiochus's invasions, but there's one reason they can't do anything about it. Their armies are all focused on defeating Perseus. The Romans are strategically savvy people who only commit to one major Eastern war at a time. And indeed, we're told that there's a Roman delegation that is basically standing by. They're waiting for the defeat of Perseus. And once they hear about the results of the Battle of Pydna, they make haste straight away to confront Antiochus IV. And here we actually have a famous scene at Pelusium. Antiochus IV is there. He's got his whole army with him. He's got all of his friends in the court with him. And the ships carrying the Roman ambassadors sail up. And here Antiochus IV, he's friendly with the Romans. He knows these guys. He's hung out in Rome. He likes gladiatorial games. He sort of expects a kind of friendly exchange. And so he goes up to the senior Roman legate, a guy named Popilius Linus, and basically puts out his hand. Let's shake hands, man. How's it going? And Popilius Linus is silent. And remember, these are just ambassadors. They've got no Roman army behind them. There's no legions. But the Roman ambassador takes his staff and draws a circle in the sand around Antiochus IV. And then he says, do not step out of this circle until you have decided to withdraw your armies and stop threatening our friend Ptolemy. Now, this is tremendously humiliating. In fact, Antiochus begs, he says, can I at least talk to my friends? Can I consult with my court? He's on the spot. His soldiers can see him. His court can see him as essentially a Roman ambassador demands his complete compliance. He decides, though, that he has no choice. And again, a lot of that has to do with the fact that that Perseus is gone. He, at this point, probably knows that. There is now a Roman army in the east with nothing else to do. And so he, humiliated, makes the only logical choice, and he agrees to leave Egypt. And so this ends the Sixth Syrian War, in which a single Roman legate, single Roman ambassador, humiliates a Seleucid king to save a Ptolemaic one. And this moment, I think, is emblematic of Rome's really, at this point, kind of uncontested power in the East. Now, Antiochus probably is in a terrible mood. He is moving back up from Egypt, and as we will see, he discovers that there is stasis, civic strife, civil war in Jerusalem. And next time we will talk about Antiochus and the Jews, his sack of Jerusalem in 168, and the events that lead to the Maccabean revolt, and eventually give us the Hanukkah story. So we'll talk more soon.